exclusive inside information into the state of this election and the truth about the polls. Polling booths are now open, Australians are casting their votes, and the election is anyone's to win. Now, tonight I'm going to tell you how the polls you're reading in the news are wrong when it comes to this federal election and what's really going on here. Most national polls have been showing Labor ahead, and some have even pointed to majority government for Labor. But this is a fantasy. Now, you need to remember that the polls are simply a national survey of around 1,300 or so voters. It's like a thumb in the wind to see the national mood. And the national polls pick up general trends and shifts in sentiment, but in terms of accuracy for the election outcome, they are categorically not the right tool for this particular election. Because this, more than any other, is a hyper-localised election. It doesn't matter what the national opinion is from 1,000 or so voters out of 18 million registered voters. It matters how the voters in the seats that are in play will vote. And the Liberals are polling around 600 people in individual seats. Labor would be doing the same. So you look at 600 voters per seat compared to 1,000 people nationally. And when you look at the results from this, there's no question Peter Dutton is absolutely in the game. Liberal strategists are comparing this election to 1998, when John Howard lost the two-party preferred vote at 49% to Beazley's nearly 51%, but Howard won majority government. Now, this election could be a case where Labor wins the 2PP vote, the two-party preferred vote, but Dutton either has more seats or there's a hung parliament. A likely outcome right now is that Dutton and Albanese both win seats in the high 60s. And then it would be who has the highest number and who can negotiate to form government. Now, Labor does have the advantage here because the Greens and the Teals would help Albanese to form a radical Green left government. It'd be even more out of step with Australia's Judeo-Christian values than the Albanese government currently is. Now, a good outcome for Peter Dutton would be reaching 70 seats or more, which would mean he'd have to pick up 13 seats. And the coalition currently holds 57. Now, it's a big ask. But this all depends on how the next week and a half of campaigning goes. Now, here's some insight into Liberal Party strategy. I can reveal that the vast majority of Liberals' election spend is geared up from today onwards. That's millions of dollars. Dutton's team has held back the vast majority of their election spending until now. Their view was that Easter would be a reset and voters would start thinking about the election when polling booths open. Now, this could be a genius move, or they could have just left their election spending too late to make a difference. We know that Labor's aggressive attack ads have taken a hit on Dutton's personal standing, never mind whether they're true or not. And we'll yet to see whether the Liberals' advertising spend on television and online hurts Albanese in turn. But either way, right now, the election is still highly competitive. One strategist said to me that at the moment, the Liberals are within touching distance of being able to form a government, but there's work to do. This is an important reminder that the narrative suggested by the national polling that you keep reading about, that it's impossible for the coalition to win and that Labor will form a majority government, this is inaccurate. It's why I've spent the time digging into the difference between the published polling and the internal research to bring you this information because it is crucial. Both Dutton and Albanese know this. They know it's tighter than is being publicly suggested. And Peter Dutton, even this morning, spoke about the 2019 election when all the polling said Bill Shorten would be Australia's Prime Minister. It was utterly wrong.
I think if you have a look at the 2019 poll result, where all the published polling was pointing one way, the reality is that there was a different outcome. Now, I'm not going to go into the private polling, but you'll see where the government's spending money at the moment in their seats. They're defending seats at the moment. They're not on the offensive. So I think there's a bit more of a sophisticated view in relation to the polling and what's happening at the moment. Australians are hurting. That's the reality.
So Dutton, they're saying that their private polling is different and reflects a different outcome to the published polls. It's also what Nationals leader David Littleproud said in an interview last week as well.
I don't think the national polls are reflective of the hyper-local campaigns that are taking place there. And I think, to your point, it's exactly about cost of living, particularly as you get out of the inner suburbs where there is not necessarily a bigger cost of living crisis as it is you get out further out. They're not feeling it as much. And I think what's important is that while we're not walking away from the national polls and what they reflect, what we're seeing now in internal polling is that as you get out where Australians are struggling, and we're saying to them, we're going to give you a tax cut of $1,200 an individual, $2,400 a family.
Now, Anthony Albanese is getting cocky, but he knows this election is much tighter than the perception in the media. And he even warned publicly that, like Dutton said, this could be a repeat of 2019 when everyone said Shorten was going to win but didn't.
I remind colleagues that 2019, the bookies paid out. And guess what? That didn't occur. That was a very unwise thing to do.
Now, here's something else. It's also worth keeping in mind that the pollsters behind Newspoll are Pixis Polling, and they do the polling and research for the Labor Party. Now, I'm not saying Newspoll's inaccurate. I'm just saying it's worth keeping this in mind, that the pollsters behind it are being paid by Labor, probably millions of dollars. Now, the Liberal Party's polling is done by Freshwater Strategy, where the pollster, Mike Turner, is considered the best in the business. Now, where Labor is spending its money also unpicks the narrative that it's confident of winning government. Labor's financial spend shows it's putting money and resources into holding on to very safe seats. Coalition analysis of Google and YouTube advertising spends shows that Labor is spending the most on safe Labor seats, and these include Wills, held by Peter Khalil on a margin of 4.6%, where Labor spent $129,000 in the past month. Chisholm, held by Labor's Karina Garland, this is on a margin of 3.3%, and Labor spent $116,000. The seat of Hawke as well, margin of 7.6%, and Labor spent $111,000. McEwen, considered a safe seat again, Labor spent $110,000. And then Bruce, held by Julian Hill on a margin of over 5%, and Labor spent $109,000, and on it goes. Now, this advertising spend is on digital advertising. It's how political parties now reach young voters who aren't consuming traditional media just as much. I mean, as you know, they're online the whole time. A coalition source said that, and this is the coalition source quoted in The Australian, they said that Labor is sandbagging in seats they claim they're not worried about. And some of these are very safe Labor seats: Gorton, Hawke, McEwen. And the ALP is pouring hundreds of thousands of dollars into retaining. Now, in some seats, Liberal internal research shows that there are huge swings towards the coalition. It's been this way for months now. So big, the Liberal strategists are describing it as historic. So the message is this election is not over. Voters in key seats are unhappy with Albanese, understandably so. And the polls were disastrously wrong in 2019 and again in the recent American election, when many predicted the result either wouldn't be known for a week or more, or they said Kamala Harris would win. Now, Australian pollsters aren't more sophisticated than the American psephologists. And despite the sand in the hourglass quickly trickling, we're only on day one of voting. The election isn't written in stone. And at this point, the outcome is still up for grabs.